Imagine someone who earns a decent salary, lives in a reasonably nice area, drives a fairly new car, owns or rents a comfortable home, sends their kids to a decent school, and takes 1 or 2 vacations a year. By most definitions, that person is middle class. And by most definitions, that person is also quietly exhausted, financially stretched, and secretly wondering why, despite doing everything right, they never seem to actually get ahead. This isn't a personal failure, it's a structural one, and understanding why it's happening is more important today than it has ever been. Here's the belief most people start with. If you work hard, earn a stable income, and live a responsible life, money should feel manageable. That's the deal the middle class was built on. Work, earn, spend on the basics, save a little, repeat. For a long time, that deal actually worked, but somewhere along the way, without any single dramatic announcement, the deal quietly changed, and millions of people are paying the price without fully understanding why. Let's start with the most obvious culprit, but one that's more complicated than it looks: housing. 30 years ago, the average home cost roughly 3 to 4 times the average annual salary. Today, in many cities, that ratio has doubled or more. A home that would have taken 4 years of income to buy in the 1990s might now take 8, 10, or even 12 years in the same city. Wages have not kept pace. What this means in practice is that the middle-class household today is either spending a much larger share of its income on housing than the previous generation did, or it's being pushed further from city centers, adding commuting costs and time that never appear on the official price tag of the home. But housing is just the beginning. Let's talk about the 2 expenses that have quietly grown faster than almost anything else in the last few decades: healthcare and education. A generation ago, a middle-class family could absorb a medical bill without much panic. Today, even people with health insurance regularly face bills that run into thousands of dollars because deductibles have increased, coverage has narrowed, and out-of-pocket costs have steadily climbed. Meanwhile, a college degree, which the middle class was told was the guaranteed path to a better life, now carries an average debt load that can take a decade or more to repay. So, the middle class paid for the education their parents told them they needed, borrowed money to do it, and entered the workforce already behind. Now layer on top of that something economists call lifestyle inflation. But it's really something more subtle and more psychological than that phrase suggests. The standard of what counts as a normal middle-class life has quietly risen over the decades. Air conditioning, once considered a luxury, is now expected. Having 1 car became 2. Streaming subscriptions, gym memberships, smartphones, and fast internet are no longer extras. They are the baseline costs of participating in modern life. None of these things are unreasonable on their own, but collectively, the floor of what a middle-class life is supposed to look like has dramatically risen, without anyone voting on it. And because most of these expenses feel normal rather than extravagant, people rarely think to question them. Here is the deeper, more uncomfortable insight. The middle class is expensive to be in, not just because prices have risen, but because the middle class has become the most heavily marketed demographic on Earth. Think about it for a moment. The wealthy don't need to be convinced to buy things. They simply buy them. The poor don't have discretionary income to target. But the middle class? They have just enough money to make the decision feel like a choice and just enough aspiration to want the things that are being sold to them. The entire economy of subscriptions, financing plans, lease agreements, credit cards with rewards points, and installment payments exists because the middle class has enough income to commit to monthly payments without having enough savings to just pay for things outright. You're not buying a couch, you're committing to 18 months of payments on a couch. And every company in the world knows this works because it smooths the price into something that feels affordable even when the total cost is anything but. And this is where it connects directly to wealth building, because here's what most middle-class households never fully see. The high cost of being middle class isn't just draining their present income, it's stealing their future. Every dollar that goes toward a high car payment is a dollar that doesn't compound over 20 years in an investment account. Every unnecessary subscription, every impulse purchase financed on credit, every lifestyle upgrade made just to match what peers are doing represents not just the purchase price, but the long-term growth that money could have produced. The wealthy understand this instinctively. That's actually one of the reasons they stay wealthy. They don't treat their money as something to spend as soon as it arrives. They treat it as something to deploy. The middle class, by contrast, often earns well but deploys almost everything outward: rent, car payments, insurance, food, entertainment, debt. Very little gets deployed inward into savings or investments that could eventually reduce the cost of being alive. So what do you actually do with this? The practical answer starts not with cutting everything, but with seeing clearly. Most middle-class households have never sat down and added up the true annual cost of their lifestyle. Not just the big obvious things, but every subscription, every finance charge, every insurance premium, every monthly commitment running quietly in the background. When people do this honestly for the first time, the number is almost always higher than they expected. And once you see it clearly, you can make actual decisions rather than just wondering at the end of every month where the money went. The second shift is learning to separate the lifestyle from the identity. Being middle class used to mean financial stability. Today, it increasingly means financial performance. Performing stability through what you own, where you live, and what you drive, even when the reality underneath is financially fragile. Letting go of some of that performance, choosing a slightly older car, a slightly smaller home, fewer subscriptions, less frequent dining out, doesn't make you less successful. It makes you one of the rare people who is actually building something, rather than maintaining the appearance of having already built it. The middle class isn't shrinking because people are failing. It's becoming more expensive because the entire system around it has been designed to absorb every dollar it earns. The people who escape that trap aren't necessarily the ones who earn more. They're the ones who finally stopped paying the premium for looking middle class and started investing in actually becoming something more.